Good for the fans. Welcome to Money Mama Talks. I'm so stoked that I get to speak with you. I heard a lot about you when I was dancing at Be Spun and at Cheetahs. We have some mutual friends there. Can you introduce yourself, please, and do just the mini version, and then we'll dig deep into the rest.
Yeah, so, mini version of who I am as a person. Okay. My name's
Right, that sounds bad.
Just like summarize your entire life into 2 sentences. My name's Jordan Kensley. I am based in Los Angeles, California, and I teach pole dancing internationally for a living. And that's my short version.
And that is the short version. Perfect. So we just did a pretty interesting IGlive that usually I end them at 15 minutes, and we ended up talking down a whole line of things for 40 minutes. So everybody should definitely check that out as well. But so that we don't repeat that, and we got cut off.
Yes,
we were getting
blame Instagram and say that they're after me more.
Honestly, I believe it.
We were getting some real shit happen. Like, we were talking about some real shit, and they were like, not anymore, miss.
Absolutely not.
For
For some reason, your sound is like cutting in and out. Do you hear that, or does it sound totally normal on your end?
For me, it sounds normal, but I'm happy to switch to an actual, like, cord.
Maybe that's it. I can always, I have a video editing program, so I can edit this part out, but it's like, cutting in and out. Hopefully that's the fix. Let's see.
Okay, default is in. How does this sound?
That sounds good.
Yeah, you sound better too.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So we just had a super interesting IGlive talk about the shadow ban situation, about the censorship of women and minorities' bodies, and we ended up getting cut off.
Yes, we did.
So what happened? It just said...
Just like my entire Instagram just shut off, and then my phone shut off. And then when I opened everything back up, Instagram was like, sorry, you're already on this call. You can't get on it again. And it wouldn't even let me comment. It
wouldn't let you watch and comment.
Mm-mm.
That is so strange. Well, we were getting to a really interesting place, but I want to go back a bit because I had a lot of questions about how your journey into this started. You said you worked in strip clubs up until 2017, and now are teaching pole dancing. So how did you, and you also have a lot of degrees. What are the degrees you have as well?
So I have a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Arts with an emphasis. Animal Science emphasis is on the racing industry and agriculture. And then my Bachelor of Arts in Theater Arts with an emphasis on stage management and set design. So technical directing. And then I have a business minor. And then I have a certification, an international certification for structural integration. And then I have a ton of movement certifications for teaching pole dancing and movement. I like to collect degrees.
So that's a lot. Yeah. I'm always fascinated at people's journeys, especially those who don't fit the idea of sex workers not being educated and it just being this easy thing that one can do. So what was your trajectory? How did your journey end up to where you are now?
Yeah, so if you watch the live, I talk a lot about how we treat sex as kids, and I grew up in that kind of an environment where like my family's Arabic, and then my family's like, I grew up in a Republican town. I went to a private Catholic school that like was very anti-women to begin with. Like, so I basically came into adulthood with a ton of shame in my own body, a ton of shame in myself. Like, I felt I can't have, even at my heaviest, I was like maybe 150 and I'm 5'3". And I hated myself always. And then I ended up getting like an eating disorder and dropping down to about 115, still felt like shit. And then what ended up happening is I broke up with my partner at the time. Oh, my current partner made me breakfast. Thanks, babe.
Aw.
I broke up with my partner at the time, and my good friend Kelsey was who's based in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I went to school, and she owns her own studio now. But at the time, there weren't really any studios in terms of pole dancing to learn from. And she showed me a video of Janine Butterfly on the internet when YouTube was still a thing, when Facebook was still for college people only. And so weird. And Instagram doesn't exist yet. And so I saw Janine Butterfly at a pole competition just being herself and being stunning and beautiful. And it was so much more than I had ever been told a feminine body could be. And it was strong, it was athletic, it was graceful, it was sexy, it was beautiful. Like, it was this whole range of what women can be, what people can be, but so different than what I had thought I was allowed to be. So I obviously was, I clearly need to do this. This is like the coolest thing that's ever happened in my whole life, just that I've witnessed with my own eyeballs. Like, I have to be able to do this thing. And I got lucky because my best friend Kelsey at the time had a ton of background in aerial arts. She had a pole at her own house, and she was stripping at the time to pay for college. And she was like, look, let's take some lessons. So I started taking lessons with her outside of her, like just in her own studio apartment. And then I got a little super into it. And she's like, well, why don't you come to the club with me? We'll go on day shift. I'll work night shift too, so I actually still make money, but we can use day shift as like just getting used to like taller poles, actual floor work, like trying to pole dance in a studio apartment when you still have like things in your studio apartment for living is kind of like it's very minimal.
Right.
So I started working at a strip club in Tucson, Arizona in 2012, beginning of 2012. And then I got a job, like I graduated 2012, and then I got a job offer to move to California for the horse racing industry. And that's what brought me here. And so then I started pole dancing in studios pretty quickly after that. Within a few months, I started working at Jumbo's Clown Room. And I was there for 7 or 8 years. And then I started expanding, my pole life to other countries. I started touring. And then I started getting offers for like guest performances, and some of the areas around the world, like those guest performances would also have to be at a strip club because they would have the studio space, but then they would rent out the strip club, what have you, on like a weekday or for their event, etc. So I've done I don't like to call it like what is it in strip club culture where you have somebody come in as like, well, I'm this person and I'm doing
a feature.
Yes, thank you. My brain is like not awake.
Yeah.
So I don't like calling myself a feature because I've never featured in a strip club for a strip club audience. But I've done features in terms of like they would have pole dancing events in a strip club, and then I would be the headliner in that. But then I've for stripping for a few years. I've been to Vegas, worked at Sapphire for like 2 weeks, and that hustle was way harder than what I was like personally prepared to do at that point in my life. And then I've worked at a few clubs in LA. And then what really kind of solidified me stopping was, one, I had a poor experience with security. And that just kind of like fucked me up in terms of like, wow, you really just don't give a shit about your performers. And the situation didn't even happen to me. It just happened to a friend of mine. But like I continue working there under those conditions, because like if you're going to let her get injured that badly by a customer, like what the fuck are you even, like, you're not protecting us, so go fuck yourself. And then within 6 months after that, the laws changed in California, and now you're all like, if you work at a strip club, you have to be an employee, which sounds awesome. Because it means that now we get mandatory wage. We get, if we work 40 hours a week, we get health insurance. Like we're supposed to get the same rights now as every other employee situation. The problem is wage theft in strip clubs is still a huge thing. So now instead of charging like a house fee, they're charging sales commission fees. And it's like, okay, cool, but that's still not like that's not allowed. So I don't fuck with
Right.
shit like that. Like I'm not gonna give you the first 5 lap dances that I do for $100, like, and that's gonna be my pay. Like, that's not how that. You can just pay me my minimum wage, and then I get to keep the work that I did, and I'll give you your
Right.
like we always did. And it's just like a shit show right now. But a lot of people, like Soldiers of Pole and the men and women of that community, as well as multiple swaps around the world, which is like sex worker outreach programs. They're all trying to unionize sex workers right now. And they're actually getting somewhere, which is really exciting. So hopefully
That's great.
5 years, strippers and sex workers will be unionized, which would be awesome.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of my weird history and trajectory. And I went pro in terms of pole dancing in 2014.
Okay.
And then I've just been touring and teaching ever since. And then slowly but surely I taught less LA studio classes because I just was here less and less amount of time. And then COVID happened, and now I just do internet things like everyone else.
Right. And how did your, so did you have vanilla jobs the whole time, and then or you just never really went into that world after you discovered pole dancing and the more artistic, creative side of things, performance?
Kind of both. So it's actually funny, like looking back on it, I actually started I feel like I started sex work early. I used to work at a root beer stand in my hometown, which is just like a shack in the middle of a parking lot, but they only hired underage girls, which like looking back is super fucking creepy. And then our uniform, where we were required to wear like a super tight, like sexy top and then super short shorts. And it's like, looking back, I'm like, cool. So you knew, like, you're like pushing underage women, right? Like that's super.
Yeah.
But now, like, kind of looking back at it, I'm like, I've always been a sex worker. That's funny.
Right.
But when I started, I was still in college. I was really heavy into the horse racing industry. I had a job as like the director of first impressions, which is like a super fancy way to say I'm a secretary for
director of first impressions. Wait, that's amazing. I've never heard that before.
Thank you. And so the secretary, or like the first person you would see if you walked into the Volvo dealership that I worked at. I worked at like restaurants. And then when I moved to LA, I actually was a racing official for the Southern California horse industry program, I guess. So I followed the races from Hollywood Park to Santa Anita to Del Mar and like just kind of Enrito, and just kind of did like this loop. And when I did that for about 3.5 years, and the people that I worked with were awful.
Oh, really?
Where when I finally went pro and started getting inquiries for workshops at other studios and touring and whatnot, I basically was like, you know what, go fuck yourselves. Like, I quit. It was like a whole situation where an independent contractor that we had on site was sexually harassing a bunch of the women. And my direct manager was a woman, and then the general manager was a man. And so I went to my specific manager, and she told me to just ignore it. And so then I went to the general manager, and he said that he would speak to people. He would speak to that person. And that turned into just a general office announcement reminding us to be professional. And that was the speech that he gave. And that was
it.
Thing. And so then, like literally within an hour after that fucking speech was made, I witnessed the same person harassing another woman independent contractor, and basically refusing to take no to lunch for an answer. And then when she finally said no, like really, it was probably for the 12th time in a row over the course of 5 minutes. And he was like, God. Fucking period, right? Like, you're such a fucking bitch in the fucking office. Like, I went off, obviously. And
yeah.
And then I immediately went to like the highest person I could, because the way that it works in the racing industry, at least in California, is the people who work at the racetrack work for the racetrack, but the judges work for the racing industry of California. So they work for the state. So I ended up going to someone a woman judge who works for the state, and explaining the situation. She kicked him off the track and suspended him for 3 months, which was basically the end of the season. And when he got kicked off, he got called in, he got kicked off, he had to leave immediately. And then my manager found out that I had been the one to kick him out and to go to the judge. And she freaked out on me in front of everybody, said that I might as well just go be a prostitute, because that's all I'm going to ever add up to with pole dancing anyways, and that I'm a huge bitch and that I do everything for attention anyways, and what did I expect, and like just a whole rant. And I sat there and said 0 things, and then they sent me home because I caused the scene, obviously.
Oh my God.
It was such a shit show. And I spoke to a male lawyer, and he was like, yeah, I mean, they're just going to ask you to do your job again. And it was like, okay, cool. But literally nothing, like I don't get anything from this. And they're like, nope, you basically just finish out the year and then don't go back. And it was like,
yeah,
cool. So that's great. So when the season ended, I basically just quit and was like, you guys can go fuck yourself. And it kind of pushed me even further into the sex working industry, because at least with sex work, for the most part, I've always been respected inside the strip club. Like,
right.
Go there, know why they're going there. And the people who are there know what the rules are. And if you find a club, then usually the security also takes care of you. Because they don't want to be liable for anything either. And so it's interesting, the fact that like, we shit talk strippers, we shit talk sex workers, and we think so poorly of women who are in charge of their own sexual empowerment and who are not afraid of that sexual empowerment. But then at the same time, when you go, like, we talk shit about all of those people who are doing that as a profession. But then when you go into an office environment, like, I get treated worse as a woman in an office environment, and I have the entire time that I've ever worked in an office, far more so than I've ever been disrespected at a strip club. And I'm basically
that's so true. That is so true. I have a similar trajectory where I went to college for media and content marketing and advertising. I worked at places like Vice and one called Uprocks. And yeah, I mean, from unpaid intern to, low level, excuse me, employee, my ideas were just stolen, and, salaries were so low.
Yep. I know. I just did the same thing.
I feel like we all just got a little.
So talking about strip work.
We all just got a little tickle in our throat. But I felt, I quit as well in a rage, because I had a male boss who was, just ignoring all of my very legitimate complaints, telling me to put a smile on my pretty face and come in and make him look good. And I was like, I'm selling my time anyway. So, and my charm and all of these things. So I would rather be in charge of it.
Wage, right?
Exactly. Ooh, I have a cough coming on. One sec.
No worries.
Oh my God.
Bless you.
The tickle. Thank you. But I think, a lot of, I was so fascinated by this difference in politics with women and between women in the professional workplace versus, how they thought of and think of strippers and sex workers and women who are influencers or talent. And I was always amazed that we could, as an advertising agency, think so lowly of influencers when we were signing the checks that were more than our, quarterly salary for being in one post. And then at the same time having this idea that posting a lot on social media or showing your body on social media or whatever it is, trying to grow a following is shameful, when that's the direction that information and media is moving.
Yes.
So Yeah, so I find all of this extremely, extremely interesting. And how have you, changed and transitioned since COVID and, moving everything online?
Yeah, I actually, okay, so I definitely moved online when it first happened because I was supposed to be on tour. We talked about that in the Instagram live as well.
Mhm.
And for me, I actually don't like teaching online as well. I don't even like performing online as much, because there's that wall that's kind of separating you from the audience or from your students, and it really diminishes the community aspect of pole dancing, of teaching, of like having classes, of even performing live. Like,
Right.
different element to performing live where you have that interaction and that audience engagement and that energy transfer that you just don't get online. So for me personally, I went really hard right at the beginning, and now I'm kind of like taking a step back because I
Hmm.
recognize that it's not how I like to teach. It's not how I like to perform. It's giving me more opportunities in terms of the performance aspect to kind of grow and use different like different lighting, different costumes. Like, how can I use different parts of my house to do the same type of, like you said, cam work for an online strip show. But with teaching specifically for me, I think one, with Instagram lives and just the ability to have your own classes, I think it's kind of diminishing the value of teaching live classes.
Hmm.
Sense. So the idea of like, because everybody can teach online, right? But not everyone would be able to tour because you have to have a certain quality and a certain like level, if you will, in order to tour
Right.
internationally at that competition, or like, so there's less competition, and with the internet being open to everybody, which is both great and terrible, which is why I'm kind of excited to see where pole and the industry
Hmm.
in general is. Like, any person who teaches at their studio can now teach classes online, even if they don't necessarily have the training and they don't have the proper understanding of like different body types, etc. So they're given the opportunity to teach classes, and a lot of them are, what I found, teaching for free because they would rather have the following instead of teaching because they want to, or they want to be famous, and so that's why they're teaching. And the like, that idea to me
Right.
is kind of silly, because if you're just doing, like, if you're just teaching to try to feel famous, like, and some weird celebrity because the community is so small, it's like, you're not doing it for the right reasons. And I think, like, on the positive side of that, a lot of people who wouldn't have the following to tour but do have the experience and the knowledge, but they just don't have the following on Instagram, so they're not getting these workshops, they're not getting booked, even though they probably should be, or maybe they don't want to leave home but they still want to teach elsewhere,
Hmm.
now able to, as a student, go to those people as well. So like people like Melissa Schrader, who don't tour because she used to own like the Brass Bar. Wait, oh fuck, my brain just shut off. I'm sorry, I haven't eaten yet today and it's just like like dying. It's just like but
Powering off. Yes.
Rochelle Rivera would be another good example, where she tours nationally, but she doesn't necessarily tour internationally. And she's an incredible instructor for heel technique and for lines. And she has the background of ballet that she's coming from. She's extremely talented and extremely skilled. And I feel like this has given her, and many other people like her, the ability to teach and to gain that recognition that I feel should have been deserved a long time ago, but because she didn't have the following on Instagram, it wasn't. And so that idea of, like, it's opened up an entire platform in the same way that Instagram has, because before Instagram we had to do competitions
Right.
to get your clout from being a good performer and being a good pole dancer in general, and then you'd also have to be a good instructor. And now with Instagram, you can just have a flow that people like, and you can, and then you're either a good instructor or you're a bad instructor, but you don't necessarily have to do the competitions. You don't have to do the performances. You can just have the Instagram, and that's all that people are working off of in terms of booking your classes. And then you have now this new variation of like, well, everyone has Skype. So you really have to be confident and solid in what you're teaching. And
Right.
to go back to me personally, I prefer teaching more emotionally based classes and character work, and that idea of like kind of finding your sexuality and becoming comfortable with it again. Because that's what pole dancing and sex work did for me. And that has changed my confidence level exponentially. And so I want other people to be able to experience that. And it doesn't transfer as well online as I believe that it could. And I know that other people are doing very similar work and killing it in that department. But for me, I have to be in the space. I have to be able to see people and their body moves as they're moving. I have to there's so many intricacies and nuances that I look for that come from like my body work experience. And they're very like small detailed things that you can't really see online, or that is to kind of manage if I'm teaching a class of 20 people and the only thing I have is like my screen to try to look at all these 20 people and they're like the size of my eyeball. So it's, for me personally, I don't like teaching group classes online. I'm still teaching online private lessons because I can really get into details there. I'm doing performances. I will teach a specialty workshop every once in a while. But overall, I feel like for me, I don't like teaching online. I'm very excited to go back to teaching in person and to performing in person and to kind of like getting that energy
back. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not like disappointed in what's happened to COVID, because I think it's obviously transformed the pole dancing industry and the sex working industry to a whole nother level. And it's opened it up to a worldwide audience. Like it's kind of expanded the audience ability and capability, which is to eventually and hopefully expand the industry. But I think with that expansion, we have to also remember to like, oh, these new people are coming into the fold, and we have to tell them like stripping birthed pole dancing. And so you don't get to hear and come in after the fact when we've been around for over 10 years and tell us what the history is, because it makes you more comfortable. So for that kind of a conversation, if we can continue to have those conversations as we expand the industry, I think overall it's going to be a great thing for all of us. And then for me,
I agree.
It's waiting for everyone else to open up their borders again so I can get the fuck out of LA.
Yeah, and travel again. Yeah. What does your family think about the progression of your career, and did you get a breakthrough with them, or is it rough?
It's interesting. My mom has been a fan from the beginning, but like I feel like moms mostly have like a reputation of being like, I'll support you no matter what because you're my baby and I birthed you. I love you. Like,
yeah.
They tend to be more well, my mom specifically has always been more supportive of all of my choices and of me being like a strong feminine person and being a loud voice for people that I'm speaking on behalf of. Like she's always been pro that. Like she literally, my mom named me Jordan and she named my sister Adrian with the male spelling specifically because when we were born in the 80s, she wanted to make sure that if I put in my resume, they would think that I was a man so that when I actually did the interview, they couldn't turn me away. Like those,
amazing.
Like one of my mom's thought process was from the beginning, whereas my dad is an Arab man and a Republican and owns his own business. And so we actually had many years of off and on fighting to the point where like he and I are okay right now. It's fitness. I don't know. My daughter does fitness, ask her, and he'll just like brush it off. He'll only talk about the structural integration, in which case he still doesn't know how to say that. He's like, I don't know, like your stuff with the touching. And like, he doesn't really talk to me about what I do, but he understands it. And the breakthrough actually came right after we had another 2-year falling out where I first started pole dancing and I went into a competition and he immediately stopped talking to me because I was damaging his business, which is because I'm being slutty. And so he stopped talking to me for about 2 years. And then fast forward 2 years, and that's when I went pro, and that's when I started teaching workshops and everything. And he's like, well, why are you going all these places? Like, you're not making any money. And I was like, first of all, I am making money. And it took until maybe 3 years ago, which would have been like 4 or 5 years of touring, for him to actually recognize that, like, oh, I literally have not called you for anything ever since I graduated, like since I left high school, whereas my
Right.
partner works for him and works for the family, and so they're constantly in a communication back and forth of like, I need this or I need that, and like, what are you doing today, and can you do this, and blah blah blah. Whereas I've just been like, I'm just doing my own thing and I don't really need anything from you. And so in that regards,
Yeah.
he recognizes that this is a legitimate job, and that I am making an income and that I'm stable enough financially to support myself. But the real emotional breakthrough came when we got in an argument again, and he's like, I don't even fucking know why you do this. And within like 24 hours the next morning, I got a random private message from someone I'd never met before, not a non-pole dancer, who basically was just thanking me for like, as someone who came, like someone who was fluffier at the time, me, and was still very thrilled with the body that I had and very comfortable in my own skin. And just, she messaged me thanking me for just being myself and giving her hope through her eating disorders that she could one day love her body in the same way, regardless of what it looked like. And it was like a much longer message than that, but that was basically the overall thing.
Right.
Like, my work is helping other people recognize that it doesn't matter what your body looks like, that you can still be comfortable in your own skin, because you can still be worthy of not only respect for yourself, but respect from other people, even if you are like a sexual being. And
Yeah.
top of that, it goes back to that confidence, and that why I try to teach and why I like to teach to begin with, is because when you don't care, when you recognize what your body is capable of, you care a lot less about what it looks like. And that confidence kind of also brings in the idea that other people are now attracted to you because people like confidence. And
Right.
that all comes from pole dancing. And so I tried to explain that to my dad, and I sent him the message that I got, and all I got back was an okay, but we've never argued about it since. And I think he understands that I'm changing lives, and I'm changing the way
Yeah.
they feel about themselves, in addition to being able to make money with that. And he's still very anti sexy things in general, but that's
Right.
of a cultural and generational upbringing that I'm happy to, like, just for all intents and purposes ignore and not argue with, because he's letting me live my life and supporting me in the way that he feels comfortable with, which I feel, again, it goes back to consent. So if you're not comfortable with something, you don't have to fucking do it. And if I'm going to tell my students that, then I'm going to tell my dad that, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And I love that. I have a little bit of the opposite, where my dad is he's European, and he's been very like, yeah, of course, whatever, I'll still love you either way, it's fine. People are topless at the beach here growing up, and Denmark. He grew up in Denmark, and yeah, it was the very sexually radicalized in the 70s and all of those good things. And my mom is Mexican Catholic from San Jose, California. So there's a lot of shame there. But, you know, I will say that she doesn't love to talk about it, but we don't fight about it. So
that's like
it is
win, you know, and it sucks because
yeah.
that's confusing morality for sexuality, and those are not mutually exclusive things. Like, I can be a sex symbol, and I can be extremely sexualized as a person, but that doesn't make me a bad person. Like, my morals are still good. I still treat people well. It's not my fault that other people sexualize me. The only difference is that I'm making money off of their sexualization, whereas other women don't. And I think that's kind of also changed a lot of my friends, or a lot of my family that are not my immediate family, or that are a little bit more like the people that I know back in Ohio that are more conservative. It's that idea of like, well, how many times have you felt sexually or just sexually intimidated or sexualized within your office environment? And do you feel like you were getting paid for that experience? Because I'm pretty sure you were just getting paid for the job that you were doing, and not for being sexualized around the office. And like, and it goes back to like when I was in horse racing, I was the youngest person there, but I was also the only professionally dressed person there, like in terms of the women, because they didn't have like a huge dress code policy, like jeans and a t-shirt. Like we're on a racetrack, no one really cares unless the races are happening, and then you have to look a little bit nicer. But like, because I was, again, that director of first impressions, just like coming through, I would wear like appropriate office attire, like business appropriate attire. And it would be sweaters or like nice button up shirts from Express. But like that same idea, because they fit me well, because I have a young, attractive body, I was still sexualized and I was still told that what I was wearing was inappropriate. And it's like, how is this like, how is my outfit inappropriate? Like I'm literally in a pencil skirt and a fucking button.
Yeah.
Like, how is this inappropriate? And the buttons aren't even like cleavage showing. They're like up to my fucking neck. Like I can't be any less sexual unless I'm like hunched over and tucking my tail, like have 8 chins. And it's like,
right.
So that you don't fucking sexualize me. That's not my problem. I'm just doing my job and you're the one who's doing this. So it comes back to like, well, if they're going to do it anyway, I might as well get paid for their fucking looks, you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. All right. I love it. I love everything that you stand for, and I don't want to take too much more of your time. Where can we hear more from you, see more from you, buy more from you? What can we, how do we follow, support?
Definitely, if you want to support me, please follow my Instagram. Again, I am private, so if you're a woman who's interested in following me, please just message me and be like, I'm a real person and a woman, and I'm happy to like instantly add you. And then if you're a man and you would like to be added, currently I'm only accepting men who tip my profile. So if you'd like to add me, or if you just like what I said and you would like to tip me, I take Venmo, which is at Jordan Kensley, and I take Cash App, which is $ Jordan Kensley, and then I take PayPal, which is jordankenslepole@gmail.com. And then I take Bitcoin, which I've never gotten. But if you're interested in selling me Bitcoin, I'm happy to take that as well.
Smart. Very smart. Very smart. I like that. Yes.
My Instagram is great. And then for me, I would rather you follow and support, I guess, people and profiles that are doing really big social justice movements, whereas I'm just talking about my experiences and how I see the world from my point of view. Like Soldiers of Pole is making a huge point to kind of unionize strip clubs in California, and then Swap LA and any swap SWOP, and then just like look up your area, and there's swap all over the world. And that's a sex workers outreach program that's constantly not only creating funds for sex workers so that they can feel supported, because a lot of the governments did not allow sex workers to receive any type of funding. Like I couldn't even apply for my business, which is structural integration. I couldn't apply for an SBA loan because I, as an owner, was a sex worker at one point. So shit like,
wow.
Yeah, shit like that's really impressive and stupid. And so kind of supporting businesses and pages that are trying to make an active financial difference in the lives of sex workers, or who are actively fighting the government systems that are trying to put bills like SETSA and FOSTA into place. The newest one being the Earn It Act, which basically is the same as what China just did in their Freedom Fighter Act, where anybody that is deemed a terrorist is now blocked from using the internet, and you are now on a watch list, and they can decide what that means. So you can be basically just talking about sex work and like, oh, well, that's a terrorist organization because you're radicalizing people to be sexually empowered, or what have you. Or you can talk about the BLM movement, and that's, oh, well, you're radicalizing and you're anti-national, so you're now being blocked. So the Internet Act is again under the guise of sex trafficking, but if you expand that expands like the uses outside of sex work, it's going to fuck over everybody. So if you haven't heard of it, definitely look into it. Definitely vote no. Definitely call your senators and your congressmen and all those people to vote no. But like, follow me, but also follow other people who are doing the actual work of helping the community at large, and
Absolutely.
put me there as well. So that's all. Sorry.
I love it. No, that's exactly right. We also need to, there are people making, active, like, oh my God, now my brain is farting. There are people who are actively working with legislation and on the ground. And then there are people sharing their stories and trying to spread those messages as much as possible. So definitely, yeah, keep an eye out for both. And I am so, so, so happy we got to do this. It was really great speaking with you.
Yes.
And yeah, eat something. I will let you get a bite to eat.
In front of me. I'm very excited about it.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks for interviewing me.
Yes.
Thanks for letting me ramble, go off on my.
I loved it. It was all much needed food for thought.
Thanks. Well, I hope you have a great day, and
Thank you.
I will see
We'll
you.
talk soon. Yes. All right. Bye.